It's ridiculous.
Brad, you're walking on water. You are Beer Jesus.
I'm the Beer Jesus. I just want to say, this is probably one of the best experiences of my life.
For the last 7 years, Brad and I have been travelling the world hunting down the best breweries and beers, as well as searching out the most amazing places to enjoy them.
Drink it in!
We've met homebrewers in the Arctic to help judge at their beer competitions. We've witnessed the pure insanity of China's own Oktoberfest. We've got lost deep inside the mazes that make up Czechia's lager cellars. We've travelled halfway around the globe just to taste the best IPAs fresh at source, and lots more besides. These adventures have taught us amazing things about beer, brewing, people and the environment, and how they all come together to create a culture we've fallen in love with. So join us as we explore the world through the medium of beer. Meeting master brewers, digging into beer history, brewing collaborations, and trying to act sober against all the odds. Through our travel documentaries, beer school episodes and sofa sessions, we'll teach you everything you need to know to enjoy beer at its best, and to appreciate the wonder that is the world's favourite alcoholic drink. We're here to show you that at the end of a long day, all you need is love and beer. Welcome to the Craft Beer Channel. Hello everyone and welcome to the second live show of the Craft Beer Channel's 2023. This is a really exciting, really special edition of our live shows where we're joined by four leading lights of the craft beer industry, and we'll be raising money for the amazing womankind throughout this stream. So first, I'd like to say to all of my guests, Happy International Women's Day for yesterday.
Right back at you so much.
It's already been pointed out in the comments. Wasn't it yesterday? And yes, it was. But we can still keep the good feelings going. So I guess we should start by introducing everybody so that everybody knows who's on the stream, and then I'll explain how the stream's going to work, and we'll get stuck into the beers. So should we start on my right? Oh God, I don't know. Nadia, we'll start with Nadia.
Hey, I'm Nadia. I'm Brew York. Tell me all you want to know about me.
We'll get more into that later.
Shall I carry on along the road?
Yeah. Let's go round.
So I'm Emma, and I'm a beer writer, and I do some audio and some video, and that kind of stuff. Enjoy my beer.
I'm Jaga Wise, and I'm the head brewer over at Wildcard Brewery in London.
Amazing. Hello, last but not least, my name is Emmy Harrison-West. I'm a freelance journalist, columnist and beer writer, and I'm a member of the British Guild of Beer Writers too.
There we go. Yeah, well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming on the stream. We've got lots of questions to ask you, and I'm sure in the comments we'll have lots of questions too. So if you've got a question, please do put it in the comments, and I will endeavour to get to it. If I miss it during the conversation, we'll try and have a sort of a Q&A of 20 or so minutes at the end where you can feel free to re-ask the question if I missed it. What else have I got to say? Yes, we have a fundraiser going throughout all of this. There is a link at the top of the comments where you can donate to Womankind Worldwide. They do really important work funding different charities, different projects, and working with charities all around the world to create pathways for women to get into employment, to protect them from violence, and to give them more economic and influential power in politics, in work, wherever it may be. So it's a really worthy cause. It's one of the official International Women's Day charities. And thank you so much to everybody that bought a taster box as well, which we'll be cracking into now, because £2 of that is going to charity as well. We're yet to finalise that with a Hoppy Place But if you've got thoughts about where that should go, we'd love to hear them. So please put that in the comments or during the stream. Everybody on the stream can let us know where they think it should go as well. Shall we get a beer open and get stuck in?
Definitely.
I should have had it closer to hand. Right, so yeah, we are starting with a beer from Jaeger from Wildcard called Main Hustle. What can you tell us about this beer, Jaeger?
Okay, so this beer is a 4.6% pale ale. So it is made with Citra and Equinox, and it is meant to be super easy drinking, nice and juicy, sessionable pale. But it's got so Equinox a really interesting hop in there. So it's a little bit spicy, and I tend to always use it when I'm looking for something a little bit more pine forward. So as part of this series, I made 3 different beers. I made 2 pale ales, one that was super duper gentle and soft and citrus, and the other one which was very pine forward and citrus pine spicy, which was this one. So and it can be quite challenging when you're making 2 beers that are pretty identical in every way in terms of its grain bill. So I'm just really trying to highlight just the differences within the pale area. But yeah, but it's meant to be really super sessionable. And in the series, like I said, there was 2 pales and an IPA, and I've really been enjoying just releasing beers as a trio or as a quad, because you get to tell a whole story with the beers. So yeah, cheers everyone.
Yeah, cheers. What do we think, everybody?
It's a stunning beer, absolutely beautiful. It's like bright, spicy, and really interesting. I love it, and I love the name as well, because so many times you get told as a woman like you've got a side hustle, but I love the name as well. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I quite liked that main hustle, because it is. I know lots of you guys do as well. I have a lot of side hustles on the go, but I'd call brewing my main hustle for sure.
Why don't you tell us about all those hustles? Because there's music, film, radio. I forgot what radio was. I'm a podcaster, for God's sake. Yeah, tell us about the side hustles.
There's quite a few. We'll be here for So I do the BBC food programme, so I'm a regular there, and you can catch it on Sundays 12:30 on BBC Radio 4, or you can catch it on I actually sound just like the voiceover. Or you can catch it on BBC Sounds. I do all sorts. I've got a show that's out on Amazon Prime called Beer Masters, starring the one and only James Blunt, which was quite fun. So people can catch up with that as well.
There we go. Side hustles galore. We've actually we've got a question for you already from the Kansas Pilgrim. As someone who loves history and craft beer, I've been looking to try Gruit style beer recently, trying to imagine what people were drinking in the Middle Ages. Continued. I know Jaeger's brewed Gruits before. I wonder if she's made any of it.
Yeah, I did actually. So I made one the other day for it was like a historical recreation of a brew, and it was for a program on the History Channel called Medieval Brews. So I'm really lucky that I work next to the wetlands, Walthamstow wetlands. So I literally just went out into the wetlands, picked some herbs, and put it in the beer, which is probably what they would have done. So the whole area of brewing historically, especially before the area of generally knowing about hygiene, is really interesting, and generally knowing and making beers that were physically pale. Like, it was very difficult to / impossible to make pale ale. So a lot of the beer would have been brown, probably a bit smoky because it's been probably dried over wood or in an oven, etc. So you end up with this like brown, slightly sour beer made of not hops but herbs. So but it was really good. It's actually really interesting, and I tasted it, and I was thinking, This is, I can totally see, I could totally see it. I could imagine myself being in a tavern in way back when and having mugs of it. So it's definitely one, if you're an interested home brewer, to have a go at, because the taste of it is just so different to what we brew now. But yeah.
Do you know what? I presume you know what herbs you did pick and what went in.
So very luckily, yeah, no. So very luckily, a few years ago, as part of the International Women's Day, it was Unite Forage. So we had to go and forage our local area, and so I had a forage expert with me, and she showed us all what to pick and how to recognise different herbs. So there's our International Women's Brew Day educating us once more. So I feel confident in about 3 different herbs. Nettle, mugwort, and a few others like that. But I feel confident in those and those only.
Yeah, won't be a new grew it every month. You've just got 3
No.
recipes. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's absolutely delicious beer. We'll come back to you in a sec, Jago. It'd be great to hear from everybody what they got up to yesterday for International Women's Day. Let's start with Nadia. What did you get up to yesterday?
I have to say, this is very sessionable. Going down quicker than I thought. We had a collaborative brew day with a load of different women from different sectors of Brew York. So we had we invited over, some of our bar managers, the marketing and sales, and we tried to include as many women from across the company as possible. And then we had the invite open to kind of other people that we've worked with, and we even had one of our particularly loyal customers who came to join. So it was a really, really lovely day. We had, oh God, there must have been sort of about 13 women, all brewing together, and we had little events on at the brewery, and then we went for a beer afterwards together, and it was just a really lovely day getting to know women across the company that I don't get to work with very often, and we had people from bars that stock a lot of our beer. We had a group called the Egalitarian who we've been working with, who champion reducing sexual violence in bars and at events, and we've previously done a beer with them, so we invited them back, and we had a really great day full of beer.
Tell us a bit about Brew York, because being from near London, it's been occasionally tough to get hold of your beer. But when we did a live show with Brew York in December, and we got the brewery tour, it's huge. Like, it's incredible what's been achieved so quickly by Brew York.
Yeah, I mean, so it started on a smaller scale in a brewery in the centre of York that we still do utilise, but we've moved over to this bigger production facility. We're about to celebrate our 7th birthday, so that's really exciting. And yeah, the business has just grown and grown. I mean, I've been there for coming up 2 years, and even in the time frame that I've been there, there's been sort of massive growth in the business. So it's just been a lot of fun being able to kind of expand and develop and get our beer out to more and more places. Hopefully you'll be able to find it in London a bit easier soon.
I mean, I definitely think it has started appearing, which is how sort of you ended up on our radar and we did that live show. But it was such a surprise to see how big that brew house was, and to hear that you're a business big enough that there's people you don't really work with or meet that often. Like, so many craft breweries are small enough that you're in the same room most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a bar in centre of York. We've got one in Pocklington, which is just outside of York, and then we've got another one in Leeds. And then I think it's when did we move over? It's been just over 2 years since we've been at the larger production facility, and it was this big jump. And I joined the company just after that move, and the scale up was handled really, really well. Like we've had loads of new people joining in and bringing in new experience, and it's just it's been wonderful to watch the business grow, because I actually got into craft beer when the Brewery York bar first opened, and I lived in York, and I went along to this little tap room and saw the much smaller scale brewery inside at that point, and so it's been a lot of fun to watch it grow.
Right, so that they were part of your sort of introduction to modern beer, was the bar and the place you've ended up.
Yeah, it was. And I started with an apprenticeship, and I did my apprenticeship with Brewery York. So they've been heavily involved in my beer journey.
Great. Well, let's bring Emma into the chat. So I'd love to hear what you were up to for International Women's Day.
Yeah, so I went over to Hand Brewery, so Hand Brew Co. They started a few years ago in a pub in Brighton, Hand in Hand, and I believe in that pub they've got the smallest smallest commercially operating tower brewery in the country. It's this little tiny staircase up the back of the pub. But a couple of years ago, they also got this new facility in Worthing, which is where I went, with a big brewery and a tap room. There were lots of women there, and so Kate Hyde is the head brewer there. She trained in France, but has been with Hand for a couple of years now. So she organised, I think it's her second International Women's Day event, and yeah, she kind of gives all these opportunities for people to network and meet each other. So as well as the brewing, I think there was some crafts, there was some live drawing, there was a book club with Jane Payton talking about her new novel. There was some table tennis. There was a secular thought for the day, and there was also a twerking workshop. Now, sadly, I couldn't get there until around 5 o'clock, so I missed. The world will have to wait for my twerking debut, I'm afraid. But I walked in just as the yeast was being pitched, and there was kind of this wassail for the yeast kind of going on, and lots of singing. It was really nice, actually, with all the women who were there. And and then I was able to avail myself of some very lovely beer and meet some lovely people from right across the industry. There was some brewers, some home brewers, bottle shop owners, brewers from a wide area, from London and from down in Portsmouth, I think, and then lots of kind of wider industry folk as well. And there was some we had some really, really good beers. And I'm a little bit delicate today. It's not big and it's not clever, but a tiny bit delicate. But Jager, your beer is going down a treat, so that's obviously what I needed.
It's quite a good hangover beer, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think there are a lot of sore heads today, just generally women across the industry. A lot of sore heads. So thank you, Johnny, for doing this on the night.
Yeah,
you're welcome. I mean, I did when I sent out the invites, and all of you lovely people confirmed. I was a little bit like, there could be a dropout the next day. So I appreciate that the revelry didn't get out of hand. Emmy, what did you get up to? Emmy, what did you get up to yesterday?
Hello. So I've just recently moved from Walthamstow, unfortunately, Jaeger. So Wildcard was a local, and so was the wetlands as well. I didn't go picking any psychedelic herbs though. So I've just moved to Edinburgh about 6 months ago, and I celebrated International Women's Day with Beers Without Beards, the beer social group in Edinburgh, and we went to Pilot Brewery and we brewed a sour IPA called the Whole Shebang, which was out in April. And we had like a hop workshop, we had a tour, there was a brewery dog there, which was amazing, and there was no twerking, but there was lots of drinking. But no, it was an amazing day. Lots of brewers there from West Brewery, Moonwake Brewery, from Pilot itself, and Closet Brewing Project, which are an amazing new brewery. If you haven't heard about them. But no, it was a great day to meet new people and just to kind of share beer with amazing women and people in the industry in general. It was really good fun.
The Edinburgh scene seems to have really kicked on sort of the last year or two, Pilot doing wonderful things and have been for a couple of years, but New Barns and then Donzoko have joined in, and it feels like it's becoming a bit of a capital for modern beer.
Yeah, definitely. Edinburgh and Glasgow too. And there's a Glas Ladies Beer Society as well in Glasgow, and they're always doing tours around Edinburgh and Glasgow. But I live in Leith now, which is very close to some fantastic breweries. Because I was worried about leaving London, about leaving the amazing brewery scene there, and Edinburgh seems to have shut up in terms of craft beer and in terms of like ale drinkers as well in general. I joined the local Camera group too, and so I'm kind of making my way around cask ale pubs too, and gradually getting them into draft beer, slowly but surely. But yeah, the Edinburgh beer scene's fantastic. The sours that are coming out of Pilot, and the lagers coming out of Donzoko, and Moonwake pales and stouts, they're all phenomenal. Every week I have a new beer that I'm just like gobsmacked by. So it's a blessing and a curse, really. My bank account does not look great, and my liver will not be thanking me. But it is worth it. It's worth it for sure.
Ben Filmbus has just asked, do Beer Without Beards have a podcast?
Oh, I'm not sure actually. I don't think so. They do lots of social meetups. They're on Facebook and they're on Instagram, so definitely have a wee look over there. I'm not sure if they do have a podcast actually, but that'd be great if they did. If you have an idea, definitely get in touch with them for sure.
There we go. Right, let me. Where are we? Is that's the right button? I've clicked the right button. I can go back to the middle of my screen for a bit. So yeah, I've got some questions that I wanted to put to all of you. And one that I love to do to try and really celebrate what's going on. So we've talked about the International Women's Day events that you've been to, but what companies have you been visiting, collaborating with, drinking with, or even if they're not breweries, have been really impressing you with their approach to diversity, and particularly women in beer? Have you seen a lot of breweries doing the right thing and being vocal about it? I didn't say who can go first. Emma, you nodded. Go on. Oh no, Nadia, go.
Nadia, go.
So I mean, it's not a brewery, but as I mentioned with the people who are joining us for International Women's Day, I really do want to sort of push forward and champion the egalitarian. They have there is female-owned business who have been doing workshops and training with bars, universities, events, festivals up and down the country, training in sexual harassment awareness and safe space training. And they have been doing an absolutely incredible job. And so we were lucky enough to get them on board to do a collaboration with them. And they've been working with us in our bars. And I'd just like to put them out there as a really fantastic group who've been doing amazing work in this area.
And Emma, you like me must visit a lot of breweries. Has anyone really impressed you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of breweries making some good efforts. I mean, to mention Hand again last night, the inclusive kind of atmosphere, the way that the guys stepped back and really let the women take control yesterday was really impressive and really enabling, I think, for everyone involved in that. And I think that commitment runs much deeper than just one day a year kind of thing. I suppose the other thing that the Brave Noise collaboration, so Nadia, these kind of collaborations, they show a real commitment, I think, because from what I understand it, that breweries don't just brew the beer, they kind of then make some kind of commitments. Do you have sort of a contract to say what kind of commitments you're going to make, kind of thing? So it runs a bit deeper, doesn't it, than just producing a beer and sticking a label on it and saying that's we've done our bit, kind of thing.
Absolutely. That was that was a conversation that we had when we were signing up to do the beer was okay, we're going to do this, and so what else are we going to put behind this? What commitments are we going to make, and how do we make this a reality in the brewery and not a statement piece?
And I think also I'm prepared to be shouted down, but I've seen a lot of progress with Camera over the years, particularly around, say, their learning and development output that they have. Alex Metcalf, who's kind of doing a grand job of trying to platform women's voices, people of color, all different groups, working very hard to do that. And I know that we're still on a kind of a journey, but those things, I think, for me, have particularly made a difference. The kind of things that are being commissioned and are being put out, and hopefully that will translate further throughout the organisation and the wider industry as well.
Mm-hmm. Emmy, I listened to your appearance on sorry, not the Beer O'Clock show now, Beer Longing, in which you talked about Brave Noise perhaps not being picked up by as many people as it should have been. Is part of that because it is more of a commitment, whereas other previous campaigns have been a little bit brew a beer, put a label on it, box ticked. I think yes, it is a bit more of a commitment, but you get a recipe, you get social media assets. But I think everything in brewing is a commitment. It's a commitment to like sales and advertising and making sure people are picking up beer. But Brave Noise is different in itself because you have to have a code of conduct on the brewery website. And I don't really see that as a commitment. I see that as a kind of necessity when it comes to safe spaces and brewing spaces in general. But out of nearly 2,000 to 3,000 breweries, only 19 breweries in the UK have done a Brave Noise beer. And it's just basically about raising awareness of discrimination and harassment in the industry that women and underrepresented communities unfortunately do still experience. I've experienced them at beer festivals and tap rooms in general. And I think the Brave Noise initiative is so important because it shows as a brewery that you're willing to kind of say, yeah, we stand with you, we're here. We believe in a code of conduct. We believe in kind of everyone feeling like beer is a safe space, because unfortunately for a lot of people, it's not. I absolutely agree with you, Emma. There's still some progress to go in beer in general, but it has come in leaps and bounds in terms of their beer festivals being more accessible spaces. They now have code of conducts in place at beer festivals too, and it generally is starting to feel a bit safer. And I feel like if a brewery was to put Brave Noise in their kind of portfolio, it shows that you stand with them too. But I understand the cost of living crisis is difficult to kind of combat as a brewery. But I guess it's just about investing in kind of what you believe in as well as a brewery and what your morals are. But I really enjoy the Brave Noise initiative. I've brewed 2 now. Second one came out yesterday with Merrikai. They brewed a mild, which I'm very excited to try. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of progress, but the right people are doing it in the right places, which I'm really excited to see. And Jagger, you must see a lot of different companies as well with your broadcast kind of stuff as well as traveling around as a brewer. Are you seeing companies doing the right things?
It's a really interesting one because, with the Brave Noise is a really good example. So I head up probably one of the most diverse breweries in the country, both in terms of race and gender. I've not done a Brave Noise beer, and that's got nothing to do with I don't believe in the cause, etc., etc. Just that things are really hard right now in the brewing industry, and there's a lot of practical things that are just taking our attention. Obviously, the number one priority of everyone is how do I keep things moving? How do we pay everyone? How do we make sure things are really good at the moment? And we are post-COVID. It's just with regards to the Brave Noise, only 19 out of how many thousand? That sounds horrible on paper, but I do feel like myself, like I will do it. And I'm sorry I've not done it so far, and I will do it. But with regards to, it's really interesting because there are a lot of things out there that are box ticking exercises, and I put a lot of stamp on actions and activities and things people do rather than things they say. So I love to look at a brewery social media, for example, and go through it and see what they say about themselves. What do they want? How do they want other people to view them? And I think generally across beer as well. I think over the years, I think, Johnny, I've forgotten your original question, so I'm just waffling now. I think over the years, I look back at International Women's Day, And I look back at year one when we did the brew day on the first year. So we're now 10 years in, and you can see the growth and the change. And yeah, absolutely, there is miles to go. But the amount of change in that decade has been astronomical. It really has been phenomenal, and it's been so exciting to watch. And when you go to other industries and other drinks industries, especially, you see that we're not unique with these issues in the beer world, and we're not even unique with these issues in the drinks world. This is an issue that is prevalent across a lot of industries. I would say probably all industries, this glass ceiling for women. The fact that we do not have enough company owners, we do not have enough people, women in management. So it's an issue that is to a degree societal, and we have to look at some of the causes. And sometimes I think we do need to look outside of beer, but I think beer for us, because it's our world, it's a great thing for us to shape the world that we are in, because it's something we know, something we're passionate about, and it can make a really big difference. But one of the things I really like to look on International Women's Day, I like to just reflect generally, look how far we've come. You know what I mean? Look how far we've come.
I was waiting for somebody else to chip in there. Sorry, but I mean, I think it is. You know, camera's a great example of, you know, there's so much that they still have to do, but they have taken it incredibly seriously, and you know, have been criticised very recently over sort of festivals and stuff, and have taken it very seriously, which, you know, hasn't always been the case and still isn't with some companies, you know. And that was, you know, why the McKellar story got so big and the Brewdog one has, because it's denial, you know, and it's very hard to break through those barriers with bigger companies.
I think it's interesting, you know, the way you were saying, you look at companies and their actions, and for me, the thing that tells me the most about a company will be if there has been something that's been brought up, if there have been accusations, it's the response. It's always the response. You know, even if there have been issues, how do you address that? How do you show that you are aiming to change culture? And codes of conduct are a wonderful thing to have in place. Are they enforced? Are these things looked at? And that's why there's things like the disparity between Camera right now and Brewdog is accusations are put forward. How are you dealing with that in the public sphere? And denial is never going to be a good way to go.
It's such an interesting area, I think, because a lot of small breweries do not have HR. So there is this whole myriad of complications of when an issue comes up. Like, there is an HR element to how grievances should be handled in a professional manner. So I think it's important for so many companies who are too small to hire someone to deal with that, for them to make sure they have external people they can go to, they can call when something comes up, and get actual professional HR advice. I think a lot of this is just about not trying to handle it as an untrained HR professional. Like, you really do need to speak to people who know what the hell they are talking about. Their entire business degrees dedicated to this subject, and it's important to consult with others who know what they are talking about. And it's a funny one with the public space. I think it's really interesting, because if someone comes to me, if a member of staff comes to me and says, I have an issue with X, Y, and Z, the last thing on this earth I'm going to media. Like, that would be appropriate as an employer. So it's a really interesting space to kind of try and navigate, and it's complicated is the honest answer. And I'll have everybody else everybody else feels about this. But I mean, yeah, I just think it's complicated.
It's
Yeah. I can appreciate that. Yeah. No, I was just saying I can very much appreciate that. It's not a simple thing to handle within a company at all. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And external HR, I think, is a very important thing in any business to retain impartiality.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say, it was exactly that. So when I was doing a lot of news writing for Good Beer Hunting, I used to get so many people message me and say that this had happened at a brewery or a bar, and would I do a story on it? And that just shows that they didn't actually have anywhere to go. They went from incident, being stonewalled, and then being like, well, "What? I go to the press? Is that my first port of call where I'm going to be listened to?" So there isn't enough HR in small brewing, and there's reasons for that. It's budgetary and it's priorities that perhaps need to change. But I guess things like Citizens Advice Bureau are places where people should be encouraged to go as the first port of call, because they will be able to hopefully get you in touch with people that can give you the advice that needs to happen if there isn't a process in place while those processes are enacted.
I do think, though, that the press and using social media is vital and key, though. I do feel that its power to add pressure in any field when voices are not being listened to is so powerful. And it's something that can and has really made a difference across a myriad of sectors and a myriad of issues. So going public, absolutely, but it is just I think it's nuanced and complicated. Is what I would say.
Yeah. Well, talking of nuanced, hopefully not complicated, should we go to beer number 2? Slightly crass link, apologies. But so this is Couplers, which is from Double Barreled. We were hoping to have Lucy on the stream, but sadly couldn't make it. I'm very excited about the idea of a West Coast beer, which is always lovely to see. So, for those that don't have it in front of them, it's a Comet, Centennial, and Chinook Cryo West Coast IPA, West Coast Pale Ale, led by brewer Chelsea.
I love the can. I've never seen this before in a can. Like the kind of triangle in the label is very, very impressive.
Oh yeah, that's quite cute.
Little notch.
Cool, isn't it?
I don't know if that's all their labels, probably.
I've only just recognised what the can art is, and it's all fittings, and I'm so overexcited about that. That's fantastic. I love it.
So who among us are great West Coast lovers?
Oh yes, yeah.
I like a West Coast.
I want it to punch me in the throat. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a massive fan of a West Coast. I'm looking forward to trying this one though.
Do we think it's going to have the comeback that idiots like me are saying online?
I think
I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, look at Oregon Trail. I mean, how popular that beer is, or is it just popular amongst bitter heads?
I mean, I think it's kind of changed Andy's business a little bit. I think. I mean, he was obviously a very small brewery, about 800 hectoliters where he is, but I mean, he was looking at contract brewing for a while and all kinds of things to keep up with it. So I think it is. I think it is a very popular beer, and for great reason. The comments are just full of West Coast, Best Coast.
I know. It's in my name as well. I get that all the time, but I'm actually not a West Coast drinker, so it's wasted on me. But this is beautiful. It's a really good beer.
It's lovely.
Well, what is it about West Coast?
You know what I think? I think brewers really love West Coast. I really like a West Coast, but like I don't know whether the public are as into it as we are in the beer industry. The general public, I think they still prefer a juicy, soft.
I completely agree. I sometimes worry that so you know that everybody has different levels of bitterness that they can actually perceive.
Mhm.
So you know, a lot of people won't like really, really bitter stuff because actually they can taste it way more. And I think my perceived bitterness is pretty low because I love bitter everything. So sometimes if I'm, you know, if I'm making a beer, I'm like, this is the right level of bitterness for me. Doesn't mean it's everybody. I have to dial that back a bit. For me, the more bitter, the better.
Absolutely. Bitter as my heart.
Mm.
Yeah. I think sometimes people, you know, they choose those hazy pales. I mean, I'm not saying people don't prefer them, as I'm sure a lot of people do, but at some points that's been all that there is on offer. Anyway, you know, I remember, you know, particularly when we came out of lockdown, kind of when the pubs first started serving, I remember going out and going right round Brighton where I live, and all there was just rows of kind of 4.2% juicy hazy things because you know the weather was nice or whatever, and people were buying big trays of them. I feel that choice has gone a little bit, and hopefully choice will come back with bringing more West Coast back. I feel, yeah, I think sometimes we can fool ourselves thinking we've got loads of choice, and actually we haven't quite a lot of the time. We've only got hazy pales. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting with the hazy pale style, though, isn't it? It's been on top for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, there's hazy pales and there's hazy pales, isn't there? There's some that are lovely and have structure and are satisfying, and then there's some that are just, I found them difficult to drink because there's no structure, there's no bitterness, there's nothing apart from, it's like drinking a pint of orange juice and lemonade or something. I wouldn't go back for another one, you know. But and I think, yeah. So I really hope that you know, well, whatever the choice, whatever people decide, I just hope that, yeah, not to always be faced with 10 taps of juicy pale would be really nice.
Sometimes there's a pastry stout, Emma.
Oh yeah. What am I talking about? Of course.
I'm really enjoying the resurgence of like bitters and milds. I'm absolutely loving it. I think it's great. I think it's nice to have a good selection of hazy pales for summer, and obviously brown ales as well seem to be coming back. Lots of porters, and I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a very good selection.
Hasn't it been amazing to see so many brewers, modern craft brewers, going back into cask? Has been really fun to watch, actually.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful beers. It's coming out of cask at the minute.
We our last live show was with Verdant, and they did a tour, a brewery tour, and they went through their tap room. And I would say half the people there were drinking their cask beers, which is just
really
kind of remarkable. If you'd ask them, is that what's going to happen if you release cask beers? They'd be like, no. But it really has sort of captured people's imaginations. And what's really great about it as well is that there are, I think, like yeasts that can be in, you know, because we're using British yeast to make New England IPAs, and it's working across into cask beers for a lot of modern brewers as well. So we've been surprised by how close we've ended up in terms of yeast profiles at the very least. Emmy, I'm interested to hear so is it the bitterness that made you not love West Coast, and can you build a tolerance to it, I guess?
I think I have. Back in 2021, I had COVID and I lost my taste and smell for about 8 weeks, which was rubbish for my job, obviously. So it kind of all came back. But it's the bitterness for me, but I'm finding it a lot more accessible now. I'm enjoying sour beers a lot more now as well than I used to. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this one. I don't know if there's much of a difference between the West Coast Pale and the West Coast IPA. I guess it's a lot darker and a bit stronger, but because this one's 4%, so I feel like it's quite sessionable. It's the bitterness. I find it quite dry, and I feel like it coats my teeth, and I need to drink a lot of water with it. But it's a stunning beer. I love everything Double Barrel do. I think they're very special, and I know this beer the proceeds go to the Coven Wellness Officer Project as well, which is
cool.
A really good initiative that I'm starting to see at beer festivals up and down the country now, which is, it's a good move.
Nadia, we've been talking about what we'd love to see, which is probably more diversity on the taps. And I wondered whether, with more women and more people of other backgrounds in the brew house, is that going to help with diversity of style, because we all have different tastes, and how much can increasing diversity in the actual brew team help with diversity of what's being brewed?
I mean, of course it increases diversity, because the more different types of people that you have presenting their experience and knowledge and ideas, then the bigger range you're going to get and the more information that's out there. Something I find so wonderful about the craft beer industry is that everybody's so willing to share. Like, it's an industry where people like to collaborate with each other because they want to see what somebody else is doing, and that person is always going to be happy to show what they're capable of and exchange ideas, exchange information. And it's such a kind of wonderful bonding thing that if you only had a kind of small section of society, like one kind of stereotype of people, then it's going to make it quite a small body of information. So the more different types of people you can bring in from different backgrounds, and the more they learn, the more they're going to bring into the industry. So everything gets better with different people bringing in different ideas.
And popping over to the wetlands to grab whatever's closest.
Well, exactly. I think we should have a chat about some of those herbs, because that's something I'd love the idea of.
and what? So Brew York are they're very famous for the pastry style brewing, and I think your core pale ale has fruit and lactose in. Have you seen? Obviously that's been hugely beneficial for you for growth. Have you seen people coming into the tap room and asking for beers like this, or like the one we're going to drink, the Brave Noise one, in a bit?
I think we are known for pastry. So a lot of people who know Brew York will come in looking for a pastry stout or a pastry sour, but you also have a huge amount of people in York coming in who are just looking for a beer and looking for something interesting. So of course you have a lot of demand for pale ales and for lagers, and something that we do, I think we do quite well, is actually catering for a big number of styles. So I mean, at our tap room we will have
Have we lost you, Nadia?
I think we might have done.
She'll be back. We'll finish the thought.
I think what was important about what Nadia was saying as well before then was that idea that a diverse team is such an asset. I think sometimes there's this idea that getting is striving to have more diversity within a team or within whatever you're doing is somehow a bit of an effort, and somehow it's a struggle and it's an effort, and it's something you've just got to do because the pressure's on. But actually, all the evidence points to the fact that the more diverse the team, the more creative, the more ideas, the more different ideas that flow from different people, and it's an absolute benefit. Why wouldn't people want that? Why wouldn't people want to have that?
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm just gonna, whenever I look for beer and look for new breweries to support, I look for people and breweries like Wildcard, like Brew York and Double Barreled and Elusive, that are actually dedicating themselves to kind of bring about change in the industry and not making a big deal out of it. It's like kind of just part of the everyday. It's part of the brewing process. It's the passion and it's the morals that come with every single beer. It's not just a tokenistic International Women's Day post. It's genuinely being dedicated to change and dedicated to making beer for everybody, and kind of like challenging those stereotypes and the sexist tropes that you see a lot of at beer festivals and in tap rooms and in pubs and on Instagram. I can't like say the amount of times yesterday I saw an International Women's Day post from breweries that have never ever shared any posts about women at all throughout the rest of the year. And I get it, it's difficult, but I guess it's kind of just saying, yeah, we're willing to be educated, we're willing to try to make progress and to make change, and kind of put passion into it, and passion into change, and making it kind of accessible for everybody, not just women, but everyone from underrepresented communities and just making it just for everybody, making it enjoyable for all, because that's all we want really as beer drinkers, is to feel safe in a space that we feel welcome in and see ourselves into. So, I mean, as a buyer, I put my money where my mouth is, and I put them into breweries' pockets that I know are dedicated to supporting people like me and to making a change. But I don't know if a lot of other people do, but that's certainly what I do anyway.
Absolutely.
My question for you, Emmy, on this stream was going to be about events. You've written quite a lot about it in your career. I wondered, kind of two prongs to it. One is what can breweries do to make sure that people feel safe and welcome? But equally, because there's 100 people watching this stream right now, not all of them will be in the beer industry. What can the bystanders do? What is appropriate to do when stepping in, and how do we make sure that people feel safe in events and tap rooms and such?
Absolutely. I feel like education is key. I feel like it's important for a drinker and an industry worker to be educated, to ask questions, to not be afraid to kind of approach people and to ask them, what am I doing wrong here? Like, how can I do better? How can I help? It's about kind of holding yourself accountable and kind of challenging people who, or perhaps your loved ones, or perhaps your friends, and making people feel uncomfortable and making them think, well, why did you say that? Why did you treat that person like that? I think at festivals in the past, the kind of behavior gets put off as banter, and it's absolutely not. And I feel like it's about calling out a bad behavior in spaces, about having the signs on the back of toilet doors, but also being present at these festivals, saying you can speak to us, we are here if you need us, and constantly getting the message out there on Instagram, like through who you support in your beers, and kind of supporting projects like the Wellness Officer Project, like having regimes in place that aren't just male security guards, because there are people out there who have been through trauma and who are vulnerable and don't know where to go. I mean, I've been to beer festivals and I've been harassed and I've been assaulted, and it's a really uncomfortable situation to be in, but security guards are men and there's nowhere to go. So I think as a brewery and as a industry worker and as a beer drinker, it's about challenging those tropes, challenging those stereotypes, and just asking people. After all my work, I've had so many messages from men being like, I didn't realize this was the kind of microaggressions that you were getting every single day, and I will do better, and I will challenge my friends, I will challenge my parents, and I'll start to support breweries that have my interests at heart. And it's not going to happen overnight, but I'm definitely starting to see change, and it is really refreshing. But I think it just starts with education. March is International Women's History Month. It's a great time to educate yourself on kind of the history of women in brewing and exactly what people are going through kind of day to day. Like on Instagram, I get loads of comments about my weight, about the way I look, and it's not acceptable behavior. But unfortunately, it's what we've been prescribed as the male-female binary to kind of, I think it's just about completely eradicating that. And I'm seeing a lot of brewers in industries do that, which is so refreshing and really quite supportive. I don't know if anyone else has seen that in like brewing spaces or in tap rooms in general, but I've definitely started to see that in festivals, like kind of bystanders kind of asking how you are and cutting into conversations, or being like, mate, that's not cool, like why did you call her that, or why did you touch her on her hips, or why did you comment on her outfit? And it's slowly but surely coming through, which is really nice to see. But I mean, we don't want people to feel sorry for us, we don't want like kind of sympathy. It's just to say, I'm here and I got you. And that's, I think, the most important part. But in industry professionals and beer drinkers alike to support and to kind of engage with.
Definitely. I think I would say I've seen more of that in the public sphere all round, slowly and bit by bit, but you will see more people and more men calling out people around them and people they know for sexist and unacceptable behavior, and it has been positive, and there's more. We definitely need to go further, but absolutely I've seen progression, and that's been wonderful. You need to feel supported by the people around you, and I completely agree about male security guards. If you've been in an uncomfortable situation, if you've been harassed, or especially if you've been assaulted, as a woman by a man, you probably don't want to be going to a man, and that is something that is a big thing that festivals and bars could take on board. So I think that's a very important point.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this quite a lot on the channel, and you know, I like to think that I'm aware of most of the issues. But when you said that, Emmy, on the on the Beer Longing podcast, you know, it was something that I hadn't entirely considered myself. That yeah, when there is an issue, if it's only male security guards, it's deeply inappropriate and potentially challenging that that's the only place that you can go, and that was not something that had necessarily occurred to me much. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's so important that these things are pointed out.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, International Women's Day kind of exists for people to have a time of self-reflection and a time of self-realization. It's not about like kind of realizing your privilege, it's realizing that there's more that can be done, and kind of how you can support women and underrepresented communities in the industry in general. And I think it's not about punishing yourself for not knowing, it's about rewarding yourself for educating and for educating other people, because ultimately education has to start from somewhere. And I think if you talk to people like me and talk to other women in the industry, we've all got stories to tell, but I've been telling these stories since I was 12 or 13, and it's only now that people are starting to listen and starting to realize that, oh, actually, maybe I shouldn't walk behind a woman when it's dark at night, or maybe I should, like, you know, it's start to have that kind of self-realization, that concept of what is safe and what isn't, and what is right and what is wrong. But that's why I love March and why I love International Women's Day in general, is for people to read the right books, for people to ask the right questions, and to say, yeah, I'm going to do better, and I'm going to stand there and help you out. And I think it's a great one. That's why we have these conversations, why we have these live streams, is to chat to people and to get that conversation going. Because ultimately, if one person kind of calls out some sexist behaviour, then that's one more kind of generational part of the community that we've reached, and that's all. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why I do what I do. It's difficult, but you know, education has to start from somewhere, and mm-hmm. I'm very happy to do
that. So we've had a comment from Matthew Kinnan, who says, I absolutely embrace women in the beer industry, but do you realise that most breweries aren't concerned with gender, but how physically demanding the job is? We've got two breweries here that might have to play that.
That's an interesting question. I think this is exactly back to what I was going through. I absolutely appreciate that question, but I think it's the prescribed sexist structure.
I don't appreciate that question. I don't appreciate that question at all. I don't appreciate that. No, that question. You can do one. Whoever said that, you can do one. I'm perfectly as capable.
Jake, you cut out, but you said you're perfectly as capable as any other man.
Oh, sorry. My rage was interrupted. Sorry, guys.
Oh,
I think it's just a prescribed trope about women in general. Like, we are just as capable to drink and to lift heavy things as men are. I'm sorry that society and everyday life has prescribed males to be stronger, because ultimately that is a prescribed trope that is wrong. And I think this is why we have these streams, is to say that there are two female brewers here for a reason, and because they're like important key parts of the industry. And unfortunately, pop culture and society has told us that we're weak, and we're absolutely not. So I think it's good that the question was asked, but unfortunately it's probably in the wrong place.
Well, maybe it's the right place. Yeah. So I think
you go. You go before.
Oh, sorry.
You go.
I don't know if I'm all out of time with things. So I think this might be the right place for it to be asked. If somebody's asking the question, maybe they need to be educated a little bit, because there's always this idea that men are naturally stronger than women. This is not biologically necessarily true. There's a lot of societal reasons why men appear to be stronger than women. It's usually because men are pushed towards more physical activity. So when I started in brewing, I was concerned about the physical requirements of the job. But actually, there are two aspects to this. One is that actually the job became physically far easier just a couple of months in, because I was doing the job. So I was, exercising and practicing these things. And a lot of stuff to do with lifting is about technique, not actually about, having huge muscles. So I've never not been capable of doing the job, but I managed to make it easier for myself actually just by doing it. And the other part is that actually there are manual handling laws within physical work that mean that you cannot ask people to do things that require you to do anything dangerous with your body. So if a job is requiring you to be ridiculously strong in order to do it, actually that's not going to be meeting manual handling laws, and you shouldn't be asking people that at all. There are various different things in place, including training, lifting equipment, and other things like that, that mean that this job in brewing is not out of reach for anybody. So no is the answer. Physical requirements of the job are not a barrier in terms of gender whatsoever.
Great answers all. And thanks for the comments.
A little bit angry.
It's a really interesting area, right? It's a really interesting area because so in my job I manage a lot of people of obviously both genders, of various physical strengths, right? So in my team there's a brewer called Liam, who is a rugby player, and he is an absolute unit just as a human, right? And he can lift. He does it for fun. That's what he does in his spare time. He goes to the gym and lifts. That is a massive asset on my team. I have someone who can just lift like a lot, right? So if there is an awkward, huge lift, it is, of course, Liam, we need a hand with this. And that's just general, because that's one of his major life skills, right? I've had brewers, male brewers, I've had female brewers, mainly male actually, who have an issue, and they went out skating at the weekend, and they hurt their back slightly, and they can't pick up anything more than 5 kilos or 10 kilos. I've had brewers who on the canning line who are struggling moving can from one to another because they've picked up an injury writing or etc. Within your job, there are, as Nadia rightly put it, there are laws that regulate what we can and cannot lift. And the brewing industry is really interesting, actually, because it kind of bypasses that. A full cask is 50 kilos, right? No human should be regularly lifting 50 kilos on their own. But in beer, the beer industry, we do. And it's very, very common on drays to have 2 people to help with the general demands of the lift. But the reality is, when you work in beer, you pick up techniques that prevent you from lifting. And one of the things that has made me the most confident, I think it's something that comes with experience, is I ain't lifting anything that's heavy, that's too heavy. I'm not doing it anymore. So a really good example is when I'm racking casks, I will rack too high. And then on the 3rd layer, I'm like, please give me a hand with this 3rd layer. Because it takes 10 seconds just to get someone to just help you lift on the 3rd layer. But that's something that comes with confidence and with age. And to say, I'm not going to throw my back out to lift this 50 kilogram weight up to 1.5 meters, 2 meters high. It's outrageous. And the reality is, it's why we roll casks. And I say it and I see it all the time, this machismo nonsense of people feeling that they have to lift things when they really shouldn't. So there was an example. I had a driver who was picking up a cask, so a keg. So a keg at full weight is 40 kilos, right? And you can roll a keg. You can literally roll a keg. So you can take it from A to B, roll it 95% of the way, and you only have one lift, which is into the van, right? So this courier, he picks up the keg, and I said, mate, you really should roll that. And he was like, no, I'm fine. I'll carry it. So I said, okay, you want to carry it? Carry it. So he walked off to his van, and then he walked in wet cement on the way, right? And then he saw we were all watching. He didn't backstep and go off the wet cement, put it down and roll it round. He decided to continue. So there was just like 5 steps in this wet cement because he was so like convinced that he had to carry this keg. Anyway, it makes me absolutely rage of the fact that people should not hurt themselves at work. If you continuously lift 50 kilos up ridiculous heights, you will hurt yourself, no matter what your gender. So in the beer industry, we have so many techniques to roll and to lift as little as humanly possible is the name of all of our game. So I do not buy under any circumstances that you cannot do your job if you cannot lift, because you have colleagues, you work in a team. That's exactly why breweries are set up the way that they are, so we are able to do our job.
Yeah, I'm so glad that this. Absolutely. I'm so glad that this question has been brought up, because I feel like one of the biggest areas in beer that we're lacking women is actually in production, and a huge part of that is the idea that women are not capable, and that is why people may be hesitant about employing women, and more so why women may be hesitant about applying. And then within that, even if you are a woman working in production, I think it's dangerous to have this idea that this kind of conversation that you have to be able to do all this stuff on your own, because exactly like Jaeger said, somebody's going to hurt themselves. And I think women are in a position where they feel more like they have to prove themselves and don't ask for help because they don't want to appear to be able to do less, except that's completely ridiculous, because I don't think anybody should be lifting a full cask 3 high on their own. There are a handful of people who maybe it's fine and they do this kind of thing every day because, they're built like that. But realistically, I think the majority of people, you should be asking for help. And that should be a part of the culture, is that we work together and assist each other. And so that shouldn't be a gendered conversation. But unfortunately, at the moment, it is. So that is something that I would really, really like to see change, is people not feeling like they need to prove their strength and end up damaging themselves short term or long term.
And it's really interesting when you look at the beer industry and you look at how things have developed. The units that we work in are incredibly heavy, but they have largely been designed with men in mind. So even though our sacks are 25 kilo sacks, the person that invented a 50-litre keg that has, with the weight of the metal, that's 60 kilos. What person should be racking 60 kilos too high? Like it's outrageous. And like myself, like I made an active choice. Like we don't work with 50s unless we have to. And when we have to, we have 2 people on rack. Just because, like, I don't care who you are, that's just not safe. Lifting that regularly at height, it's just not safe.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I just want to thank people in the comments who are also, agreeing with this and saying that, particularly issues like this, like the lifting of 50s and stuff, that's a workers' right issue, not a gender issue. It is stuff that should be very carefully controlled and only done when needed, and training should be provided. We'll move it along, because I've actually drunk through the double barreled as well, so this is going exactly as I was expecting. So we're next going to be drinking the elusive beer.
It got a bit spicy just then, didn't it?
It did, but it was good. I mean,
just a little bit.
I wouldn't want this to just be just a straight out conversation. And I'm glad that Matthew raised that question, and I hope that he's actually listening to what's being said.
Sort of talk about it. It is a time for education. It's a time. I mean, I don't know if you're ever going to get a space like this again, to kind of when you've got women in the industry and brewers in the industry who can give such an honest answer. And obviously, it's a great space to ask questions like that, even if they are spicy.
So, yeah, hopefully everyone's taking on board that was agreeing with Matthew. So this next beer is an oatmeal stout. It is a different style of beer, and it's a collaboration between Elusive Brewing, Good Chemistry out in Bristol, and the Malt Miller, who have joined us and have posted this comment. This is Joe here from the Malt Miller. We're a 50% owned and operated business. We employ women who have key roles in the business, and we'll continue to focus on raising this in the future. So cheers to that, Malt Miller. I'm excited to try this beer because I also know that Andy's very good at West Coast and also very good at session dark stuff. So I haven't been the comments also got a bit hectic, shall we say there. So I've lost the thread. So if a question was asked during that wasn't on that particular topic, please do repost and I will try to get to it. But I would also love to hear your thoughts on this beer because I know there's lots of people out there that bought the tasting case. And there were lots of people that said they're really enjoying the West Coast beer, but we didn't quite get to that. So let us know what you think about this beer. A hobby place who facilitated the tasting box says, "Yeah, it's not a pale ale." I do, yeah. Thank you to the three people involved, three companies involved in that. Oh, crikey!
This is a lovely beer. This is a really good beer.
It's lovely.
Give us some tasting notes, Emma, on the spot.
Oh God, I'm not very good at tasting. It's my least favourite bit of what I do. But I mean, it smells gorgeous. It's really aromatic as soon as you open the tin. And yeah, it's just a really sound. I want to be in a pub drinking this. I want to drink a pint of it in a pub, wearing a jumper, I think. And
oh yeah, it's a jumper beer, isn't it?
It's a jumper
beer, I think. Yeah, and I'm here in a Hawaiian shirt, of course. But yeah, in this beer pairs well with jumpers, I would say, is my tasting note.
There you go. That's the beautiful writing and broadcasting that Emma is known for coming to the fore. That was not meant to sound sarcastic. That was genuine. Like, Jesus. Tell us about your new book, Emma.
Well, it's not mine. It belongs to a whole host of people. But yeah, so it's Camera's Good Beer Yearbook. So it's going to be a regular yearly thing. Somebody described it as like a Beano annual for beer. In that it's supposed to capture the what's going on in beer in the preceding year and what's coming up in the next year, kind of thing. So it's kind of a snapshot of where the beer scene is at. So the first one came out in February, came out last month, and so it's the Good Beer Yearbook 2023, and kind of yeah, we had some features about. We did have a feature about women in the industry. We had a feature about the colour bar. We had a feature about milds, feature about cask ale, feature about British lagers, all sorts of different features, kind of bringing in. I suppose the way I see it is kind of beer operates on a kind of very sort of micro level in terms of the glass of beer in front of you and what it tastes like and what it does for you, but also beer is, as we're talking tonight, affects so many other parts of our lives as well, in terms of in place or time or across different areas in different parts of our lives. So I suppose it's a bit of trying to capture that really. Where is beer at this moment in time, and what are our kind of predictions for the future? Johnny, you chose your best beers of the year, I think, didn't you?
I did, and somebody in the comments is saying that. That's a different book. We'll get to that one, but they're saying your selections were better than mine. Yeah, I picked my beers of the year. Yeah,
you picked your beers of the year, and we had lots of different contributors. We also tried to capture kind of regional roundouts. We talked about festivals. We talked about the industry, where the industry is, struggles with, the economic crisis that we're in, and post-COVID. Tried to capture something of. We had a feature on Ukraine as well. So trying to capture something of where the industry is at this moment. And lots of different people contributed. So yourself, Pete Brown, Melissa Cole, Roger Prott, Jane Payton. Oh God, loads of people. I think there was about 25 different contributors. So it's a good little book. I think, you know, if you're interested in beer at all, to kind of get a really good view of what's happening in the industry at the moment. And work is already afoot on the next one. So coming up with a whole load of other things about shining the light on what the industry is doing at the moment.
Sorry, I've just embarrassed myself in the comments. I was listening, but I have just embarrassed myself in the comments. I'm going to try and salvage it, and then I want to come back to a question for you, Emma. Jager and Nadia, and Emma and Emmy, are you picking up any remotely Belgian character in the beer?
I've just been drinking it. Let me give me a moment, Johnny.
Yeah, maybe.
A teeny bit, but it's more like it's just velvety smooth. It's very like silky. This beer, isn't it? I love an oatmeal stout for that. It has a mouthfeel that I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I think definitely the texture. The texture of this beer is what really stands out. I think that's the thing that you get the most.
I really like it. It hasn't
got
any...
that sweetness to it that maybe plays into the Belgian thing, but yeah, that is super smooth, really, really smooth.
And there's a really interesting softness to it, isn't it? It's like it's soft. Like the bitterness is really nicely balanced. And we all know how to do, especially when you make darker beers, because you do have to add a lot of bitterness to make it balanced. But it's always really hard when you're balancing that against that kind of silkiness that you want to shine.
Yeah, that's done really, really well, because there is so much roastiness to it that can easily become astringent and become difficult to drink. But it's got, like, exactly like you said, so much softness that, yeah, it's wonderfully balanced. It's really nice beer.
Well, I'm going to retire from broadcasting after suggesting that there was some Belgian character there, but it is a beautiful.
I get some slight, maybe, I don't know if you've just said it, but slightly
Go on, Emmy, save me.
kind of, but like it's not as intense as maybe like the clove, like wheat beer kind of style, but I get like a little bit of it. I don't know if it's just because you've said that I'm like
it's almost certainly because
probably.
The thinking was that so Malt Miller have just done. They did a recipe box with Adnams, which their yeast does have Belgian character. It's two strains, one of which presents a Belgian character, and I thought maybe potentially they'd use the mix of strains that they used in that box for this, because I was getting a tiny little hint of almost Belgian double kind of character, but I'm gonna stay in my box. Say I was wrong. It's Nottingham yeast, so definitely not Belgian character. And I'm going to go back to the question I was going to ask Emma, which was so the book that you've just edited and published had a very broad spectrum of writers, a very broad spectrum of topics, and we sort of touched on this topic a little bit, but more from the brewing side. Are there still barriers to women getting excited about drinking craft beer? Maybe Emmy has some input as well as on what's stopping more women getting excited about craft beer, if there is anything, and what can be done. So we'll start with Emma and anyone else.
I mean, I think one thing that sometimes gets lost for me is sort of issues around intersectionality. So that when we talk about women, we tend to simply talk about women. When we talk about women in the beer industry, anyway, and I think that loses a lot of those other identities that we have around our gender or our age or our abilities or our parental status, for example. And I think we lose some of that. And I think a lot of the discussion when people think about women in the industry, we often and today is an exception, but often we platform certain types of women, or I don't know, this is a huge generalization, and maybe being a sort of a. I think sometimes we don't acknowledge that women in the beer industry are sometimes old, sometimes young, sometimes straight, sometimes gay, sometimes trans, sometimes cis, sometimes able-bodied, sometimes not able-bodied, sometimes parents, sometimes not, sometimes white, sometimes black. That sometimes we miss that, and I think that is something that we have to do, because I think until we start including older women, mothers, trans women, black women, differently abled women, but then we're missing so much about what women are. And as I say, that's not always the case in discussions, but I think it and in sort of the approaches to women that are taken. I think there are things that put women off. All of the above kind of thing that we've talked about this evening, but also, beer is still often thought of as a masculine drink, and we say this, kind of, oh, women were the first brewers and all this. We can say, but I think we can say it till the cows come home, and it sort of makes no odds. It's kind of like we've moved to a different kind of paradigm where it's perceived to be male, and I think that puts off a lot of women. And I think in terms of the kind of things that the experiences that a lot of brave women have shared over the past couple of years, and the sorts of things that Emmy was talking about happening at beer festivals, that kind of stuff is just endemic. It's around, and it's around a lot of things. A lot of what puts women off is kind of the safety. Safety is a big concern, and who we are and how we walk through the world changes in terms of how we experience our safety. So walking through the world looking like I do, a big butch dyke, I negotiate my safety in perhaps a different way to how other people might negotiate their safety, or how safe other people might feel. But what unites us, I suppose, in amongst those different identities is being women, and how it sometimes doesn't feel safe to be in beer venues. And also, I don't know, that the question that was asked about the, lifting of things, or those sorts of things. Sometimes the sexism isn't, and I'm not saying particularly about that question, but it made me think about that. Sometimes when I'm out or about in the beer world, sometimes the sexism isn't outright, and I think I have a different experience of sexism to people who don't look like me, people who are perhaps younger, straight looking. I don't know. I think I do have a different experience. I haven't been sexually assaulted at a beer festival, and I don't have as many outright sexist comments, I don't think, as some women. But what I do have, and what women negotiate all the time in every field of life, is this horrible feeling when somebody says something, a man says something, you think, would you have said that to a man? I don't know whether you're saying that to me because I'm a woman, whether you would have asked that question about, I don't know. I hear women saying that, brewers saying that they're being asked, oh, do you, so you don't do the brewing then, do you? Are you married to the brewer, or something like that? Or, or those sorts of things. And you think, I bet you wouldn't say that if there was a man stood there, but there's just, and these things that are kind of quite hard, or you get questioned on what you know about beer or something, in a way that you think, I bet you wouldn't do that to a man. I really bet you wouldn't, but it's really hard to challenge that. So all of that is really difficult. And I don't know, but I think there can be some really simple things that sort of help. I think that can help women get more involved. I think when I was at Hand last night, I actually took a photo in the toilet of the baby. They had a baby changing table, and I thought, I don't remember seeing that in a brewery tap room. I may have done. There may be some. Please correct me, and I hope there is. But I haven't seen that that recently anyway. And I suppose it's just things like that. Those sorts of conversations sometimes happen online around children shouldn't be allowed in tap rooms, or children, well, I don't want to drink around children, kind of thing. And a lot of that excludes women as well. Yes, men are parents too, but often if you're excluding children from tap rooms or pubs or beer experiences, you're also excluding women to a large extent. So I think those kind of welcoming things can make a really big difference, that women are welcome here, and all types of women are welcome here. Yeah, I've gone on for ages, so I'll stop for a bit and let somebody else say something. But
Not
You know, one thing that I find, if I go to a bar or a beer festival, speaking about the toilets, and actually it's interesting that you said about the baby changing tables, because that's one that I, as somebody who doesn't have children, I don't think about a lot, but you're absolutely right. The one that I pay attention to is if you go into a bar's toilets and they have free sanitary products.
Yeah, that's good.
Immediately, I say, this is a safe space. This is a place that cares about women's needs and is on the ball with this. And I immediately find that a comforting and welcoming thing.
But it's interesting. So I would say that more so. So every time I see that, I would say it's more welcome than a sign that says you feel welcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it's an act, I suppose. Yeah,
it's an act. Yes.
Yeah. I think you're right, and I think things like that breweries can do, which are that are
it's cheap.
better than
They're
just
so cheap.
putting up a sign.
Yeah, definitely. It's a small gesture that makes a world of difference.
Yeah. Do you know, just to put a slight male perspective on that, and it's also a gesture that's only seen by women, because if you put a sign up, you know, when I walk into a tap room and I see a sign that's got a code of conduct, I'm like, good, it's a safe space for women. Which could just be, again, a box ticking. It's like, well, everyone who walks in feels like we're doing the right thing. Whereas having something that is specifically there, that isn't a gesture, isn't advertised, it's just for the people that need those products and need that safety is
definitely. But on that, actually, I would always advocate for having sanitary products. And if you have separate gender toilets, having them in both, because then that is creating a safe space and accessibility to trans people as well. Actually having sanitary products in the men's toilets, I think, is a really positive thing that you don't see as often as you should.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen it. I really don't.
Well, I don't tend to go into the men's toilets very often, and I don't see that. And I've had male friends tell me about it on occasion, but I think it's pretty rare.
I think toilets are really important, you know, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think toilets are, a real, particularly at the moment, in the current kind of discourse that's going on more generally outside of the beer industry, that they can be a place of a real flashpoint. And I definitely, I judge my safety on whether I'm able to go to the toilet or not without being challenged or shouted at, or whether it feels safe for me to use the toilet. And because it happens regularly, and more regularly now, that I'll get challenged using the women's toilet. I don't know what people want me to do, produce my birth certificate or something, but and this kind of idea that and so you can end up, and I'm not alone in doing this, because I speak to other people just not using the toilet because it doesn't feel safe. And I think if we really are going to include everybody, we really have to think about those sorts of things, whether it's welcoming. And also, I don't, it's making the toilets nice as well. It doesn't take that much to make them nice. But there are so many beer venues where it's like, oh God, it looks like it's, I don't know, some kind of dumping ground. Oh, that's a horrible expression in this case, but some kind of horrible place that things get left, a storeroom or something that is used during the week for something else, and then it's kind of, all right,
because it is.
It probably is. Yeah, but
it's a really,
it might not have a sink, or it might not have a, it just looks really grim. Yeah.
We've been talking about this too much, and I'm going to have to excuse myself for 2 seconds. I'm so sorry. Right back.
But I think toilets are a really interesting area, actually. So at Wildcard, we've got 3 venues, and 2 of them are like warehousey type venues. So one of them, the Barrel Store, we just put in toilets. So they are gender neutral. They weren't purposefully gender neutral. We put them in. when we first got the building 10 years ago, there was one toilet, and then we're like, oh crap, we need more toilets, so we put in 3 more toilets. So it was just everyone pees there, and that's fine. And then our brewery site, again, that actually started out split, and then we ended we just made one big toilet, but that we were able to do like disability access and everything. The 2 venues, we have disability access and they're gender neutral. I've also got a pub. Now this pub is 300-400 years old, probably older. There's been a pub on that site for hundreds and hundreds of years in Higham Hill. It's called the Tavern on the Hill. There is a male and there is a female. Just because you're working with an incredibly old building, it's just very difficult to do. So it was actually really hard to add the baby changing table. Was an actual challenge. So it's a really interesting. And I would love to add gender neutral toilets into that pub venue, but I literally have a urinal setup that's probably 100 years old. I've got, you know what I mean? It can be quite challenging with that infrastructure. And we are talking about a pub that failed in COVID that we took over a year and a half ago. There are challenges in this space that are infrastructure based, and I think it's important to recognize sometimes people are doing their best with what they have, and having a male, female with baby changing and sanitary towels, and sometimes that is the best a venue can do because of its infrastructure. Does that make sense? And I know that may not be the most like popular thing to say, but it costs a lot of money to change toilets over that in this current climate is hard.
Well, I think part of the benefits of having these conversations a lot of the time is like when you talk about the ideal that a brewery or a tap room or a bar can be, a lot of the time putting out the information of what the best is will apply largely to people who are setting up something new. Exactly, like infrastructure is very hard to change, but if you're starting afresh, kind of knowing what people want and what the best setup that you could produce is, and kind of being able to create that as a starting point is fantastic. But yeah, once you already have something, it can be very difficult to work with and to change. So you do what you can in the increments that you can. But it's great to have the information out there for somebody who may be setting something up and maybe starting to go, what is the basis that I'm going to start at? What am I going to make here?
Emmy, do you have anything to add? Because I was going to come to you second, and then
I'm sorry, I actually went to the toilet, so I completely missed all of that chat. I know, it was all that toilet chat. I was like, I really need to go. I've had 3 beers now. But yeah, I think it's really important that we're having conversations about toilets and spaces that feel safe, because so many times they're kind of seen as like a second thought. And I think it's making it a priority and asking people what they want. That's all I want to see. I want to be asked what it is that I would like to see. And yeah, I guess kind of what was the question in terms of what we were just chatting about?
Well, I mean, originally it was about barriers to women getting into craft beer from a drinker perspective. But I mean, toilets is clearly a big part of that, and one that is, I think, you know, I was involved in the building of a bar at the Beer Merchants Tap, and you know, the toilets was one of the last things we thought about. And now I'm looking back on that. We did actually put a gender neutral toilet in, which I'm very pleased about, but it was still, you know, one of those last kind of minute discussions, and it's actually a very important part of accessibility, both from disability and from diversity perspectives.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I mean, I've got hearing loss, so whenever I go to a bar, it's usually not the best space for me. It's like a warehouse. It's kind of loud with scraping stools, and there's like fancy pump clips, and not a lot of spaces for me to kind of read menus or scan QR codes for untapped menus. And often it's quite a stressful environment for me to be in, and I can't lip read a lot of the time. I think it's kind of just asking different people from different communities what it is that would make them feel comfortable and make them feel safe, because a lot of people perhaps haven't thought about it, but I'm seeing a lot of changes. Wiper and True's tap room in Bristol is fantastic in terms of accessibility, and I'm seeing a lot more people asking the wider community what it is that they want. But I remember Emma was just chatting about kind of prescribed ideals of what like the kind of the binary gender is in terms of spaces, and I guess just wanted to go back to that. I mean, there's been so many times where I've been presumed that I wanted to have like a low calorie like gin and tonic or something that was fizzy and something that was pink, and I've written about it a lot in my work because there's always that table switch around where my husband's ordered a cocktail which he's absolutely within his rights to do, and I've ordered a pint and I have to like switch it, or I've been told it's like 2 for 1 on porn star martinis. And I think the moral of the story is to kind of just don't presume, just ask. It's kind of make it a welcoming space for absolutely everyone, from everyone with hearing loss to trans people to mothers to fathers to parents in general, in making it a safe space for everyone, and not just presuming that because I look the way I do, I sound the way I do, I act the way I do, and dress the way I do, that I want something particular, that you've been prescribed to my gender. I guess it just comes back to being educated and kind of get rid of those notions of gendered and ideals. But I really like these conversations because it kind of, we talk everything from toilets to baby changing, and unfortunately this doesn't happen outside of this bubble. And I think it would be great to see it in wider spaces in society, in like supermarkets and kind of just workplaces in general. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see these questions being asked in these spaces to be given for people to feel like they have a platform and like they have a space. But I love nights like these. You can drink beer and talk about spicy topics that never get talked about otherwise.
And I hope there's more spicy topics to come. We've got 22 minutes, 2 beers, and a Q&A to do. So let's get the next beer out. In fact, actually, let's do the Brave Noise beer now, just in case we do run out of time. So my banner is now inaccurate. We're going to go for the Brave Noise beer, and then should time allow, we will get to the Session IPA. So let me grab this one.
I can't do things on camera. There we go.
I'm also now battling the need for the loo.
Yeah, me too. I'm so sorry, everybody, that I mentioned toilets.
Just, yeah, I think it did inspire some people.
It doesn't get talked about enough. Great thing.
Now we all want to go.
I literally ran. This was the fastest I've ever run in my life to the toilet. I was like, what is on my bottom half? Do I have anything on in my bottom half? But I do. And I put the camera off.
Always a risk on an internet call, isn't it? Like, wait, what did I put on my bottom half?
And like being a freelancer as well, I'm often like party on the top, comfy on the bottom. So I kind of just took the camera off and saved everyone that. But I'm really excited about the Brave Noise beer. I think it's really special. I think Brew York are doing fantastic things, and I'm looking forward to trying this one. I haven't tried Elusive's Brave Noise yet. I don't know if anyone else has the Elusive Brew one.
No, been wanting to try that one.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of like what I really liked about Elusive's beer was that they kept the conversation going, kind of wrote a blog post, kind of had a taste, and kind of had a lot of people talk about it online. Because unfortunately there seems to be like releases and then no one talks about it, and then no one asks about it in 6 weeks' time. But hopefully the conversation will keep going outside of this month. And yeah, I'm really excited to try this one, even if it is West Coast. I'm looking forward to trying it.
Especially if it is a West Coast.
Nadia, tell us about this beer.
Okay, well, it's a West Coast, but it's a West Coast pale. So I think that's that little bit more accessible if you're not the biggest fan of West Coast, because it's a little bit less bitter, a little bit softer, not usually as high ABV. So I do think it's a good kind of sessionable beer, and it's our little twist on the on the Brave Noise recipe that's given out for doing this beer. So we kept it's exactly the same hops. It's the Columbus, Sabro, Mosaic, which I think is a lovely combination, and we just wanted it to be just bitter enough, bright, sessionable, and a very drinkable beer. And it's been an exciting project because I think I said at the beginning of this session that doing the Brave Noise beer has sparked a lot of conversation within the company. So within production and the bars and everywhere else, we've been talking between ourselves about, okay, if we're doing this beer, what does that mean for us as a company? What can we do to make sure that we're living up to the statement that we're making with this beer? And, you know, yes, there's the elements of it that's kind of aligning yourself with a charity that you believe in. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it's the international women, it's the egalitarian group that we've donated to in partnership with this. But definitely the most positive thing I've seen out of it is the internal conversations. And that's something that I think will continually keep going, because as a company, we're making this statement that we're supportive of this issue.
Oh no.
That sounded
You
like
can
it's going to be a
have
really good
is
point.
communication. So that, what I would say, is the biggest positive that we've had out of it is everybody talking about it continuously, non-stop. Because I think it does need to be consistently talked about. It's not the topic of the week and then dropped. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be a part of your everyday ethos.
And I mean, I really hope that conversations like this, but equally the Brave Noise campaign, what I've seen already is that people have put out Brave Noise beers and then actually not acted in the best interests of women afterwards. And I've seen them being challenged for that. So it's been very good to see that even if they think the conversation is done, now consumers are expecting more from them. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Consumers should expect more, because consumers really are the driving force. The market is dictated by what people buy, and if people, purchase with their conscience and hold breweries to account, I think that's really the only thing that's actually going to push change in the places that are more hesitant, because not everybody is going to be thinking about these kinds of things and as their main objective, as the thing that they focus the most on, because it is a very difficult industry right now. Like, it is hard. There's a lot of things to consider. It's difficult to make this the forefront. But if people are buying with their conscience, then it ends up tying into all of the other areas of consideration. So, yeah, it's definitely pushed by consumers, and I really appreciate people doing that.
Well, people in the comments, you heard that. Push those breweries that you expect better from, and indeed those ones that you don't. So we're going to move on to the Q&A section. So up to this point, I've been trying to take the questions that had a thread through the conversations that we were having. Now it's a free for all, and we'll do the free for all for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll have to call it quits. But the first question I wanted to bring up, because it's a topic that a couple of people have asked about. This question's from Kim Bruce, who says, "Why do you think breweries are whiter spaces than perhaps bars are? Jager, do you see more global majority of people visiting your brewery as it's more diversely staffed?"
Yeah. In all honesty, diversity. That's what I found. So I found just in the spaces that that I run, there are more brown and black people, and yeah. And you see it with we did a roast that went viral, and
sorry, Jager, we keep.
Oh, can you hear me?
Sorry, Jager, we keep losing you a little bit.
Where did you lose me?
You
Can
said
you hear me?
You get more on and off. We got to the part where you said there were more black and brown people in your brewery, and then you cut off and sort of cut in and out.
Okay. So I was saying, like, I found, and when you visit our spaces, you find many black and brown people are in our venue. That's because, like, a lot of the team that work at Wildcard are black, and that kind of we are. And you see it. We did a Jerk Sunday roast, and it went viral on TikTok. So we had this like this dichotomy with a traditional East London boozer. It was voted Britain's roughest pub in 2009. Sky News documentary. Check it. Eating the pub, eating jerk chicken roast, drinking beer, having a great time, and it's a really interesting. Like there are ways to engage lots of different communities in craft beer, but in my experience so far, diversity does tend to diversity, I think. But yeah, it's not something. The race element is not something that's that comfortable to talk about in beer. So constantly a woman, like constantly, and like the reality is that I claimed award-winning brewer. I don't want to talk about being a woman in beer. If I'm honest, like I want to talk about things that my male counterparts want to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I recognize the need to do it, but like the race element is not something that is that talk here, and usually lack up and the it's not as comfortable, or it's not as comfortable. I don't know what everyone else thinks. Obviously, I where I'm from, my background, like my views on this are going to be into all of you guys's. I had a brewer yesterday that came to our International Women's Day. Had never met this woman from Adam, and she called me up. She found me on Instagram. She called me up the day before, from Brooklyn, and she's releasing a Windrush beer, and she's made smoked lager. A black lady called Robin. I know I don't know you, but I'm going to be chat. And I was like, absolutely, come to our International Women's Day. She gave everyone a taste of her beer, and she had an absolutely amazing time. But the reason she spoke to me and reached out to me is because she felt comfortable doing that. Does that make sense? So it's and I don't know how to explain or how to put that in a way that makes sense. I don't. It's probably more is pure.
We've lost you again, Jager. I think we got most of that. But your audio cut out towards the end of that.
Sorry.
So
I think what was really interesting about what you were saying, Jager, and as Johnny said, we at times we were catching kind of one word in five, maybe. So sometimes it's hard to put it together. But I did hear you say it's a bit like that. Was there a 70s comedian who used to kind of miss out every three words or something? But yeah. So, but what I heard you definitely say was something around the comfortableness of talking about being a woman or being black or I suppose in my case being gay or that often I agree with you. I don't want to talk about those things. I wish one thing I think the beer industry has been kind of trying for a long time, which is good to think about women in beer, but sometimes that just results in say at a beer festival or a conference or something, there's one panel that's about women in beer kind of thing, and then the only people who go to that are other women, and what, rather than what should be happening, I think, and I wish this happened, was that women were represented on every other panel talking about everything else, and we sort of endlessly talked this sort of echo chamber of people, and I'm not sure how helpful that is, and it's also very exposing. You hear about the things that Emmy was saying, the awful things that she gets put on her Instagram and stuff. It can be really exposing to talk about various elements of your identity all the time, and also very, kind of putting people in a silo kind of thing. Well, that's the women's session. That's nothing to do with me. I'll go and have a pint when that's on or whatever. Yeah, I think there are other ways of doing these sorts of, not necessarily this sort of thing for International Women's Day, but when it's other events, this kind of siloing women to one session or whatever is just, and just treating women as that element of their identity. Oh, you're a woman, therefore you go here. This is your space to talk, rather than including, you're a incredibly talented and incredibly knowledgeable and highly educated brewer. Why aren't you on panels talking about that sort of thing?
Absolutely. I mean, like in my line of work, people, when I tell people about what I do and the fact that I'm a writer, they're like, "Oh, that's quite niche. You write about diversity," and I'm like, my life and my experiences are not niche. They're not like something to be shoehorned in. It's not. Unfortunately, it doesn't get the platform that it deserves, but it's not a niche experience that happens to half the population. It happens to all. It happens to everyone. We have different backgrounds, but we have the same stories. And I wish it was more accepted as everyday conversation, not like a panel about race, not a panel about being a woman, not a panel about trans rights. I wish it was just a conversation we're having all the time, because my trauma is not niche trauma. It's not unique. It's unfortunately happening to people every single day from every single aspect of the community. And unfortunately, I just wish it was a bit more norm. As much as my experiences with sexual harassment are norm, I wish that this conversation was normal. And I think if it's anything that people should take away is to kind of ask why these conversations aren't being had kind of in wider society, from all types of breweries, from all different types of industries, because I mean, what we're going through every day is not niche. And I think it would be great just for people to ask questions and to realize that it takes a lot for us to share our experiences and our trauma, but it's not to be put in a box. It's not to be put on a panel with 3 women. It's kind of something that needs to be part of everyday society and everyday conversation, because it is our everyday, pretty much.
Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. This is concept of trauma porn, right? Where people want to hear about that time I was grabbed up. People want to hear about the time that this abuse happened to me. The amount of questions I get constantly about, tell me about how hard it is to be a woman. Tell me about that experience that happened to you. I don't want to tell you about my experience that happened to me that time my ass was grabbed or this, because it's happened to all of us. Like, I don't think what a lot of men don't realize is the amount of times a woman's ass has been grabbed is probably like 100%. Like, it's not something that's that unique amongst women. It's something that's a part of our daily lives. Like, a part of, you know what, when I go home, I'm not going to walk down that dark alley because that's just not the way I'm going to do it. It's just part of, like, you are naturally just always slightly on alert. Does that make sense? But there is a real want to hear about all of these like quite negative things in a way that goes beyond just sharing your experiences. Does that make sense? I don't know how the rest of you feel about it. Like, I've stopped engaging when people, it's the first question people ask me, tell me about what's happened to you. I just don't engage anymore. I say, yeah, of course it's difficult, but and you try and talk about other things. But yeah, anyway, I don't know how everybody else feels about it.
I am so happy to hear you say that, actually, because a lot of my internal thoughts around International Women's Day when talking about the beer industry and brewing is, how I will respond if people ask me about my own experiences in the beer industry? What sexism have I faced? What incidences have I dealt with? And I don't want to talk about those things, really. Partly because they're personal to me, and how I've felt about them and how I've dealt with them is not necessarily something I want to put out to everybody. And partly because I don't want other people judging whether they think that's enough of a bad experience. You know, like somebody else rating, oh, how bad do they think that is? You know, versus kind of how I internalized this and how I felt about it. And by sharing all of those, it can be intensely empowering. It can be really helpful for other people listening, but it also can be very exposing, and it can be opening you up to people saying, oh, well, you know, actually, that's not that bad. You know, you should just, that's not something to complain about. So that's been a vaguely uncomfortable topic for me that actually I don't think I've addressed with other people. And I've been involved in a few events to do with International Women's Day this week, and that is a topic that I hadn't addressed. So it's actually very nice to hear somebody else talk about that.
And if someone gets attacked, but why were they walking alone? Like, you know what I mean? There's kind of there's a kind of questioning of the like maybe you put yourself into that situation, and sometimes you are in horrible situations completely 100%, but also it's not your fault. It's the fault of the other. But it's a really interesting. I think it's an interesting area. I think it's generally across there, and I think I'm also a few pints deep now, so we're 5 beers in. The general, I see strongly invited. It's just about.
So, Jager, we lost you in general.
The
internet. Come back to us.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. I'm on my mobile phone, so it's like the connections are really poor. I was saying, I think as a industry, I want to see more normalization of just women, just generally doing their things, talking about beer. I don't want to talk about being a woman. I want to talk experienced and award-winning in, please, just generally across the beer industry.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Well, I mean, we've had some comments while this conversation has been going on from people saying that they want to see more women on the craft beer channel just talking about what they do rather than, you know, the fact that they're women. And that's something that both Brad and I have always wanted to do and have zero excuse for not having done, you know. And we want to do better, and this was part of the start of that in a real way, in that it's the Burren Collective. Helen at the Burren Collective also said that she would love to see less founders, less head brewers, and more, you know, just the general people that work at these breweries, because, you know, sadly at the moment there aren't enough owners and head brewers that are women at the moment. And if we just, you know, diversified who we were talking to in these breweries, we could reach more stories and reach some more people. So that's something we're hoping to do this year to improve the representation of what's on the channel and normalize those conversations.
It's definitely possible. I mean, when I was doing fermentation radio, even when I did it every 2 weeks, I made a commitment that there would always be a woman's voice apart from mine on, and there always was. You know, I think there may be 1 or 2 episodes where it was like a deep dive into one person, but there are women that you can talk to, you know, about their stuff. You know, there's always
I think the only 2 conversations we see about women are about trauma or like achievement, and I'm sick of seeing just award winners in people who have been through trauma. I want to see everyday women in people that drink beer, that enjoy beer, that write about beer, that just want to shout from the rooftops. It's incredible that you're an award winner. It's incredible that you're the first ever person to have done this. But I don't want to read about your trauma, and I don't want to read about the things that a man has done. I just want to see an insight into your life, that kind of everyday diary into a person's life. That is what I really think journalism in beer is missing in general. And I think there's a gap in the market for it.
I actually think journalistically there's some really interesting stories there. Like, as in, like when's the last time we read an article or we saw a video from a cask washer whose job it is all day to wash casks? But like, there's so much interesting stuff goes on in that world that is just fascinating. So if you ever talk to a cask washer about bugs, so there's such, because they experience a whole myriad of creatures, right? It in a way that would probably disgust normal beer drinkers, but in a way that you just kind of deal with it. You're like, well, if I see the bug move like that, that means I should probably. And there are some interesting stories out there. So anyway, I think it's fascinating. Yeah, honestly, it's creepy. Like cask people and bugs, creepy.
I love
I'm killing myself because I've done enough cask washing that, like, I know exactly what you're talking
You're
about.
a bug person.
Oh my god, no.
This is a whole new
I
avenue.
will not
for
even get
our
into the cask creatures kind of realm of things, but like, yes.
And the worst thing is just how okay you are with all of it. You become, the level of acceptability is like, yeah, that bug is there. That's fine. It's fine. And there are very few creatures that would make you like question.
No, you get a certain level of resilience. That's,
yeah, you do.
So if you ever see a cask washer
Talking
run
about
away from
creatures,
the
my
car
cat's
station,
like
you're
me.
like, we all need to run. Everybody's got to get out of this building. Well, I can't think of a less appropriate way to end this live stream, but this is where we've ended up. So we just had a comment just saying if people could, everybody on the stream could drop their socials so that people can give all of you follows. So if you could do that quickly and then we'll wrap up, that'd be great. So Emmy, go ahead.
What do I just talk about where I am?
On social, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Amazing. Emmy Harrison West. I am Emmy EHW on Twitter. And on Instagram, I am @beerwoman, and the A is an X.
Go on, Jago.
I am, sorry. God, it's 5 beers, Johnny. 5. Okay, so I am.
It's the rage.
I know. Okay, so I am @JagerWise. So my no one knows to spell my first name, so it's JAEGA. For the brewery is Wildcard Brewery. For the pub is at the Tavern on the Hill.
Great pub. Great pub.
Nadia, are you on social?
I have Instagram. I'm not the best poster, but I am on there. So it's Nadia Spencer, but there's an extra random A. So NADIAA SPENCER for Instagram. That is all I use, but I'm also occasionally featured on Brew York's Instagram. So follow that too.
Yeah. And Emma.
So I am on Instagram, but I don't use it very often. So the best place is Twitter, where I am all the time, but more than I should be, looking at what other people are saying. But yeah, so on Twitter, I'm @Ferment Radio, so FERMENTRADIO.
There we go. Well, my next spiel was going to be, please, we're just shy of our fundraising target of $200. But while that was happening, we hit 215. So,
Yay!
Well done. Well done, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you, Johnny, so much for like inviting everyone to have a good chat. It's been really interesting. Not the way I thought tonight
thank
would
you,
go,
Johnny.
but it's been great.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely. Yeah,
okay. It's been an absolute joy having you on here. Like I say, you know, we're going to be doing better from a representation point of view, and also from a storytelling point of view. There might be a bug series, who knows?
I'm keen for that. Very
And
keen.
a toilet series.
And I hope to visit Brew York soon, and Wildcard again. We were there a couple of years ago, but we didn't actually talk to you, Jager, on the streams, on the videos. So we'll
Come anytime, Johnny, anytime.
Don't tempt me. I'll be there looking at your casks to see what's inside. Yeah, well, I can't thank you enough. You know, I really took on board what you said about, you know, after being tired or not wanting to talk about, you know, any of the traumas or these conversations and wanting to normalize it. And, you know, tonight we got stuck into some of those traumas, and I really appreciate you being candid about it and being honest and being furious at some of the comments, rightly so. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that was in the comments watching this, and to everybody that's going to be in the comments soon watching it once it's not live. And absolutely check out Emma and Emmy's writing, and Jager and Nadia's beers, because all four of them are incredibly talented people, and we should just be talking about that, really, and hopefully one day that day will come.
Oh, I'm blushing, Johnny.
I'm blushing, but I think it's the beer.
4 beers. I'm going to share the rest with my dad now. I cannot drink all 5. Oh, fantastic.
Alrighty. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, everyone, in the comments and on the stream. Until we see you next, love and beer.
Thank you so much, Johnny. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.